Chapter 9. Meat from the Sky. Better? Tirzah licked her dry lips. Had she said that things could only get better? After 3 days of marching, there was still no water to be found, not a trickle, not a mud puddle, nothing. The land they walked on now was hard and dry, littered with rocks. Here and there, small clumps of tough wilderness grass provided food for the goats and sheep, but for people there was nothing. Maha mopped her streaming face for the dozenth time. Oh, look, Tirzah, look over there, buzzards. She pointed to the east, where a small flock of great dark buzzards soared slowly in the sky. They know we're here, she said, and they're just waiting for one of the animals to die of thirst. Tirzah shaded her eyes and looked at the birds. Wicked things, she thought. Where did they get their water from out here? Or did they live on the creatures who died in the desert? Horrible thought. When the march stopped at last, she forgot everything but water. At every campsite, children cried, some demandingly, some softly. It was hot, and what little rations of water were left satisfied no one. Not far away, Moses and Aaron were trying to talk to a gathering crowd of people. Angry voices protested. Do you expect us to cross this desert without water? One demanded. Just what are we to drink? Near enough for Tirzah to hear him, Moses answered, Tomorrow we will reach a place where there is water. Be strong just a little while longer. Tomorrow, thought Tirzah, seemed so far away. How could she sleep tonight? How could anyone sleep? She might have guessed that if anyone could, she could. Already the line of march was forming when she woke. In the afternoon they came to water. Soon she would drink as much as she could hold. The thought was lovely, but a sudden wailing noise from those nearest the water startled her. Bitter! The water is bitter! It's not fit to drink! Tirzah wanted to wail too. Someone called out, Moses, this is your fault. What are we going to do now? Other voices joined in with angry words. Tirzah thought she would wail. Why was this happening? She knew she was going to die of thirst. In her misery, she barely heard the words of Moses as he cried out to Yahweh. Next to her, Maha pushed against the man in front of them. What's he doing? I can't see, Maha complained. Are they drinking the bitter water? The tall man in front of them was impatient. Hush, hush, wait a minute. Moses is throwing a branch into the water. Now he's scooping up water and drinking it. Yes, he's drinking it. From the front lines came shouts of wild joy. It's sweet! The water is sweet! Others took up the cry. A miracle! A miracle! The water is good! Under the starry night, her stomach full, the warm campfire dancing lazily in little yellow flames, Tirzah sighed happily. Between them, Jerioth and Leah had cooked a good meal from the little store of dried corn and fruit. Tirzah looked at her mother leaning against her father's shoulder contentedly. Jerioth's family had already gone to their own tent. Tirzah was glad her mother didn't mind her sleeping outside with Oren and Ram. It was so lovely under the stars. Her eyes found the cloud hovering over the camp. At night it glowed like a night fire, as if angels camped in the sky to watch over them. Yahweh had spoken to Moses this very day. Tirzah thought of Yahweh's great promise passed from tribe to tribe. If the people would listen carefully to Yahweh's words and do them, he would not bring on them any of the sickness he had sent on the Egyptians. How great Yahweh is, she thought, and fell instantly asleep. When the march stopped again, it was at Elim, a great oasis in the desert. Lush palms grew everywhere, and there were plenty of springs of fresh water. Tirzah patted Shari's gaunt, bony side as the animal drank her fill. You'll have plenty to eat today, and when we come to the promised land, I will make your coat shine once more, she whispered. Sari paid no attention to anything but the business at hand, slurping the water before her. Maybe the little donkey knew, Tirzah thought, that tomorrow or the next day the march would start again, and the water would disappear again. And so it had. Only this time more than the water had disappeared after the march from Elim into the desert of Sin. The small evening meal, a handful of raisins, and goat curd left even Tirzah hungry. She glanced at Ram sitting cross-legged near the campfire, listening to Jonathan seated next to him. Ram no longer went to their Uncle Shobaal's tent, but Jonathan still brought news of the camp each night. Tirzah listened, half admiring Jonathan's strong young face as the firelit shone on it, and half irritated by his words. The whole camp is rumbling with unrest. From tribe to tribe the plea is the same, bread and meat. It cannot go on much longer this way, I tell you, or the people will rebel. Jonathan spat on the ground and continued, The leaders are saying we might as well have stayed in Egypt. Better to have done that than to starve to death in the desert. For 2 months and 15 days we followed this Moses. Jonathan paused, but Ram said nothing. Tirzah's arm shivered in the cool night air, and she moved closer to the fire. What if Jonathan was right after all? What if the people had already disobeyed Yahweh, and now he would let them die in the desert? Someone was coming up the path, singing softly in the dark, Jerioth. Her voice was clear, high, and sweet. The words of the song fell and rose like gentle doves in flight. I will sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. The horse and its rider he has hurled into the sea. Tirzah listened carefully, remembering how the words of the song went. In your unfailing love you will lead the people you have redeemed. In your strength you will guide them. Tirzah shut her eyes and then opened them quickly to look toward the cloud of soft fire above the camp. It was still there. Did Yahweh see their hunger? Had he forgotten how little food there was? Maybe Yahweh didn't worry about such things. She wished she knew. She wasn't going to like it much if this was the way things were to be all the way to the promised land. The thought of meat roasting on a spit, its fat dripping into the fire, made her mouth water. In a moment, the vision was gone, leaving her staring at the low flames of the dying fire. Morning came, and with it the sound of the ram's horn, calling the people before Moses and Aaron. Oren, limping more than usual, leaned on his crutch, his face drawn with pain. Tirzah felt a knot tighten in her stomach. Oren was the weaker one in the family. Without the right food, what would happen to him? With the question still in her mind, she turned to her father and caught him looking sadly at Oren limping ahead of them. With a loud whoop, he scooped up the boy, crutch and all, pretending a game as he ran with him toward the meeting rock. Those closest to the rock heard the words that Aaron spoke clearly, while those further away received them as the message was relayed from tribe to tribe, clan to clan. Tirzah stood with Maha, Nahalath, and Rachel by the women of her family. She was near enough to see the prophet and his brother standing above them on the great rock. Even as Aaron's voice rang out, a strange, wonderful thing happened. The cloud above the camp began to shine brighter than it had ever shone before in daylight. The glory of the Lord, Aaron shouted as the people lifted their eyes to the shining cloud. Yahweh had promised them meat by this very twilight and bread in the morning. Afterwards, Tirzah listened as her mother explained again what they were to do. Tomorrow you and Oren will go out with the others and gather the bread. You must each gather 5 omers as Moses commanded, an omer for each person. Leah paused to catch her breath. No more and no less, please. To help you, I have marked a line on the baskets. She held a basket before Tirzah, pointing to the small dark line below its edge. Straightening her back, Leah sighed. Ouch, my back is not willing to bend so long any more. Tirzah smiled at her mother, heavy with the coming baby, and thought how beautiful her face was with its smooth skin, smiling mouth, and small turned-up nose. If it was a girl, maybe this one would look like her mother. Tirzah's nose was long and straight like her father's and Ram's and Oren's. She was startled from her thoughts by shouting and cries from runners coming into the camp. Get your sticks quickly. Quail. The quail are landing. Hurry, the air is black with them. Tirzah looked to the southwest, where the sky had suddenly grown dark with a low, living cloud of birds. The quail. Weary from their long flight, there was no escape. The birds were small and a lot of work to clean, but their meat was delicious. Jerioth laughed as Oren blew a small feather, wafting it from hand to hand. These feathers will make a soft pillow for the new little one, she said, sorting through for the tiny underfeathers. Oren sneezed, sending her pow flying, Jerioth scurrying and the rest of them laughing. May I join the fun? It was Abishur. If you have brought your flute, then you may join us, Tirzah's mother teased lightly. From inside his tunic, Abishur withdrew the flute and held it high. Will this old thing do? He asked and grinned. The flute was unlike any other Tirzah had ever seen, its smooth wood carved with tiny vines and leaves. Old thing, is it? Oren said. Then just let me throw it in the fire for you. You can have the one Peleg traded me for an Egyptian armband I found by the sea. As Oren reached for the flute, Abishur laughed and swung it out of harm's way. Sorry, I've promised to defend the old thing, he said. But fetch yours, Oren, and perhaps the two will become friends. Tirzah smiled. How different Abishur was from his brother Jonathan. The firelight played on Abishur's bowed head, the color of ripe wheat. But that wasn't the only difference between the two. Broad-shouldered though he was, Abishur had none of Jonathan's quick temper. If he had been the older brother, Tirzah thought, he might have been more like his father, Shobal, and less like his gentle mother, Rebekah. The idea that there could be 2 of her Uncle Shobal struck her as funny. Even Jonathan was not that bad. The men were returning. Her father's voice was lighter than she had heard it lately. Molid, come sit, and we shall see how these young men play. Tirzah, fetch your mother's tambourine. If I'm going to sing, I want a lot of help. Tirzah ran to the tent. Song after song they sang until at last Abishur laid his flute aside and rose to go. The embers of the fire glowed in the stillness. There was a contented quiet, full of their recent music. It had been a perfect night, except that Abihail had missed it. Tirzah knew how it irritated Abihail to miss an opportunity to be near Abishur. Oh, well, she couldn't help it if Abishur came so often to see them. He was a cousin, wasn't he?